I'm back with Dr. Thomas Williams. He's author of the book, The Coming Christian Persecution. By the way, you could follow him on Twitter at TDWilliamsRome. His website, thomasdwilliams.com. We were talking, Dr. Williams, about ancient persecution. Let's come to persecution today, which a lot of people, as you say, don't seem to recognize or to acknowledge, maybe not even some people in the churches. And yet you say it's going on all over the world. I'm quoting you, it has now reached unprecedented levels. You talk about possibly as many as 340 million Christians facing not just persecution, but in the words of a recent report, quote, high levels of persecution. So let's start outside the West and identify some of the main trouble spots and as well as some of the main perpetrators of anti-Christian persecution. Who are they?
Well, this is taking place all around the world, but some of the hot spots are in Africa, Asia, and the Middle East, I would say, because you can name a few also in South America and other places, but the main core of these lands are these. So you have situations of atheistic communism. So you have North Korea, where it's illegal to be Christian. It's illegal to possess a Bible. It's illegal to speak to your neighbor about Jesus. It's illegal to pray in any way that is discernibly public. And you can be thrown in jail. You can even be killed for that. And there are so many cases. It happens all the time. You have the case of China, where at least ostensibly there's some degree of religious freedom, but only kind of like in the case of the Roman Empire, where you do not in any way contradict the basic fundamental teachings of the Marxist socialism that is the undergirding of that society. And you can only do it in such a way as completely controlled by the government. Just a quick example, just 2 weeks ago, they introduced an app. And now in one of the provinces in China, and I know this is going to spread, you cannot go to church without having first registered on the app and reserved your place for that day. So the government now monitors not only what church you belong to, but when you go, how often you go. And they already have surveillance within the churches themselves to monitor what is being said to make sure that it doesn't, again, in any way offend the state. If you go to other places, there are many of the countries where it's most dangerous to be a Christian today are actually Muslim-dominated countries. And that's something that it's unfortunate I have to say that, but it's simply the truth. Where Muslim radicalism exists, it often, the Christians are the ones who bear the brunt of it. We have places like Nigeria, which Open Doors, which is a Christian persecution watchdog group, says is the place that's most dangerous to be a Christian today. You're most likely to be killed. And there are constant deaths, constant killing, machetes, burnings, shootings. It's ongoing, and it's also directly targeting Christians who are in a slight minority there. But both groups like Boko Haram and the Fulani Raiders in the middle of the country, they're very, very aggressive in their desire to really make life difficult and even exterminate Christians who are living in the area. We have many others in the Middle East that we've been following these last few years. It was very prominent in the case of the Islamic State in Syria, in Iraq. We have the case of Iran. Really, the list is very, very long. There are a number of other countries in Africa that I could mention. We could also mention India now, where Hindu nationalism has become more and more aggressive, especially in provinces where there are larger populations of Christians. Christianity is a very small minority in India, but where it exists, it is beaten down quite often.
Now, this seems to some degree a little odd to me in the sense that, by and large, historically, Hindus have been a relatively tolerant group of people through time and by temperament. And supposedly Islam is a religion that acknowledges Jesus to be a prophet within the Islamic tradition. Is this a theological conflict? Is it a political conflict? Is it that Christianity has gained strength in Africa, where, at one point there were hardly any Christians in Africa. Now you got African countries that are 30 and 40 and 50% Christian. Is it that the Muslims now feel that their power base in the society is threatened? What do you think is the driving force behind the kind of hostilities that you're describing?
Another great question. I think it really varies from place to place. I think you're absolutely right in the case of India. I think that there's a very strong political force right now, and there's an effort to kind of conflate Hinduism with Indianism, if you will, that to be a true Indian, you need to be Hindu. And this is something pushed obviously by the party in power and by Prime Minister Narendra Modi. So I think this is something that has a very strong political push behind it, where religion is being co-opted in a way by that party. I think in the case of some of these Muslim-dominated countries, it's a mixed bag. Sometimes it's political, but I remember very clearly the Islamic State in 2016 got very, very upset when Pope Francis tried to say that that the Muslim persecution of Christians was not a religiously motivated action at all. He was saying, no, this is economical, this is social, this is a question of clash of culture. This has nothing to do with religion. And they published an entire issue of their propaganda magazine, Dabiq, to respond to Pope Francis and say, you don't know us at all. We do what we do because this is the will of Allah, and we are following the true Islam. We are following what we're actually supposed to be doing. Jihad is part of the commandment of the way we are to live. So I think that you've got, both realities kind of coexisting at the same time.
Let's take a pause, and when we come back, I'd like to talk about religious persecution in the West and specifically in the United States.